Hello, this short little clip is going to take us into a little bit more understanding of comparative advantage. Now here we've got two countries, Nation A and Nation B, both of which can produce software programs and or wine. Now for the sake of argument, what we have here are the individual production possibilities curves for each of these nations. Notice that Nation A has a pretty steep line for their software development, and Nation B has a more flat line in their production possibilities curve. For the sake of argument, we're going to assume that each of these nations decides to take half their resources in production of software and in production of wine. And the blue area then represents what their production would look like. We would produce this much wine, this much software and this much wine in Nation A, and this much software in B, and this much wine in B. Now, that point where we've reached that production possibilities line is the full amount that can be produced given their potential in their countries. However, if these nations decide to engage in trade, what I'd like you to notice is the point that our orange bar points right here. What this is telling us is that that point right here is where we can consume. We're still producing here at this blue area here if we were using our resources in the same way. Now, when we go into trade, we're likely going to produce at different amounts. But the point is that we're going to benefit if both countries trade. So what we want to do is figure out who should do software development and who should do wine. We're not going to look to see how much wine or how much software they should do, but we can tell which country should develop software and which country should make the wine. Now, the way I'm going to do this is I'm going to first go back to our original case where we're just showing, well, what happens if we just split our resources here? And a very easy representation here is just to kind of sketch out. Let's just pretend that each nation wants to make a unit of software greater than they were making before. And we're going to assume that the unit represents the same absolute amount in each country. And so notice that I've created a bar of about the same height, and that is used to illustrate the increase in software development that each country wants to do. Now, once I do this, I can look and I can identify the opportunity cost for increasing software for each country. And notice what I do here is this is simply the difference between the point of production now and the point of production that we were, and then I fill in that bar right here. And notice that the amount of wine lost here in Nation A is much smaller than the amount of wine lost in production or in Nation B. And so what this tells us, because the width of the number of wine products that can be made is much shorter over here, what this tells us is that Nation A has comparative advantage in software development. And so if I were to try to decide who should trade, it's going to be based on the steeper line, and that will give us a very quick way of discerning which country has comparative advantage. All we need to know is which nation has the steeper line in the product that is on the vertical line, and that tells us that this country has comparative advantage in software development. Now, if we flip this around and we put wine on the vertical, we would find out that Nation B has comparative advantage, and it will have the steeper line when wine is on the vertical. Have a good day.